crime series, and it seemed to me also that script writers had taken great joy in giving their nasty characters, the evil characters, sort of secondary names like Smasher and Nasher and all sort of stuff. And I thought, there's got to be something in that. I've really got to have a look at that. So this is about a caper. It's about a criminal caper that went drastically wrong. And it's also about a very aggrieved farmer and how they meet. George Oscar Nigel Adam Davidson was angry. He cursed his mother for giving him the name that spelled gonad. The progeny of a fleeting but very intense relationship with a radio ham called Les from Goldmilly in 1972, whose call sign happened to be exactly that, gonad, which had earned him the lifelong sobriquet of Ghoulie. He was angry at being back in Chokey, and he was apoplectic with the sheer ineptitude of his erstwhile, carefully chosen accomplices, namely Patrick the Dodgem of Flirty, his so-called getaway man, who never actually got them anywhere since he failed to notice that he had parked his recently stolen Vauxhall Astra, slapped by next to the sign that said in very large, unfriendly letters that the area was subject to wheel clumping. He had been less than impressed by the contribution made by Gerald Knee Blaster McConaughey, his gun-toting hard man who failed singularly to strike terror into anybody since his brother had just been arrested for terrorist offences and had therefore had the family sawn off, confiscated by the authorities. His attempt to improvise by attaching 2 pieces of a spare copper pipe to his nephew's air rifle might have succeeded if the gaffer tape employed for the purpose had not been visible, the paint on the supposed barrels had time to dry, and if one of them hadn't fallen off whilst he was waving it menacingly in the air, thereby ruining the entire effect. He was positively seething with Tony the Tapper Morse, his alleged right-hand man, electronic expert, logician, and as it turned out, complete idiot. For who else could have managed to turn on an alarm which was not already activated and press the only button on the safe panel which said, "Do not touch unless in dire emergency," therefore closing the shutters, locking himself inside, and calling the police hotline all in one fell swoop. George was equally pissed off with his uncle Reg the Razor Redknapp, who so fate would have it was a duty clamber on that faithful day. He, who had steadfastly refused to embark on any negotiations with George because he had never given George's side of the family what was due to him when his Auntie Gwyneth had died, and therefore it was not to be forgiven. At the age of 31, George had already spent 9 of his young years in various institutions for a variety of crimes, ranging from housebreaking, car theft, vagrancy, failure to pay sundry and multifarious bills, and latterly demanding money with, well, not so much menaces as pleadings. But sadly, the alleged victim was a recently retired and embittered sergeant in traffic who decided to have him, and did. It was in his final few months in Ford Open Prison that George had begun to read more and take an interest in the world again. He had learned about the EC and the Common Agricultural Policy, but most particularly that there were now branches of a sort of French bank called Crédit Agricole all over the place, and it were like building societies for farmers. He also found out there was one in Firm in Hampshire, which is where his sister now lived, with that toffee-nosed dentist of a husband and their 3 horrible kids, and a West Highland Terrier that tried to shag the leg of anybody fool enough not to wear wellies when they passed through the front door. Anyway, she owed him, and he felt he was not telling Rupert, yes, bloody Rupert, her drippy hubby, that their firstborn Daniel wasn't exactly his, but more likely the outcome of some passionate goings-on backstage when she was working as stage assistant during the Def Leppard tour. That drummer may have only had one arm, thought Joe, but by God, he was fit. So the gang was recruited to the premises, an old and desperately insecure branch of the now defunct Martins Bank, well sussed out, courtesy of Sister Jacqueline. The day was picked, Thursday, market day, and the place would be dripping with cash because it was well-known fact that farmers always deal with cash, not plastic, and this despite the remedies in foot and mouth. And they positioned their vehicle nearby the night before, thus negating the problems of busy traffic on the day. The CTT cameras had been identified and timed for scam. There was nothing directly overlooking the front of the premises. There were two doors, four for exit, one to the front, one to the side, where the car would be. No steps to fall up or down. The police station was the other side of the market square, and just for good measure, by the time their raid had begun, the market area would be so completely blocked by dozens of beer-swilling idiots banging sticks and waving hankies at each other. Perfect, almost as good as the Italian job, only this time they would not need to blow the bloody doors off. Nothing left to chance, well, not much. Unfortunately, George had not met Nathaniel de Brotherton. Met nor heard of him, how could he, but meet they would. Like George, Nathaniel was well angry, mad as hell in fact, for that morning he had received confirmation that Credit Agricole were to foreclose on him, his farm, his beloved 90-horse John Deere, his family, indeed everything that he, his dad and granddad had worked and slaved for 3 generations, and now these French bastards were trying to take it off him. And so it came to pass that on 10:29 precisely, this George and his bemasked crew entered Courtesy Street branch of Credit Agricole, yelling and trying to be fierce and scare the hell out of everyone to get the money. Nathaniel, reprieved his beloved John Deere, a muck spreader, and a 2,000-gallon slurry tank appeared at the other end of the street. Hype clenched firmly between dentures, cap pulled down hard on his one good eye, with his faithful border collie Chip riding shotgun behind him. He approached the bank door, screaming obscenities and recalling the score at Agincourt. He also felt obliged to observe very loudly the only difference between toast and Frenchman is that you can make soldiers out of toast. He turned to the window to see ranks of petrified faces. He was well pleased with himself, for even he had not thought that a crazed farmer, a collie dog, and 2,000 gallons of slurry could strike such terror into a bank and all its staff and customers. Well, of course, he hadn't, but he felt well impressed nevertheless, screamed beefily, and pulled the lever. What followed even made news at 10 and later editions of the Third Echo. Irate farmer saves bank from gun-toting bandits, the Echo. Nathaniel, the slurry hero, giving back his farm, says the Sun. Look at our lovely farm girls on Nathaniel's big tractor, page 3, the Star. Slumping Fison's fertiliser primes, the Financial Times. It's shit, hooray, news of the world. George and Gerald did immediately manage to get out of the Credit Agricole because, fortunately, the doors opened inwards. They were not, it is true to say, quite prepared for the tsunami of effluent that immediately engulfed the premises and, of course, themselves. But they did make it, somewhat sticky and breathless, to their alleged but now firmly clamped getaway car. But following very loud, acrimonious, and it has to be said, slippery and malodorous negotiations with Reg the Razor, a police cell and a bath seemed to beckon like a lighthouse to a lost mariner. So here endeth the lesson. Tony Tapper Moore's escaped prison, but only by virtue of being declared insane, constantly screaming and having nightmares about being drowned or worse, buried alive in a flood of gurgling filth, and has never been heard of again. George was given an extra 4 years for trying to kill Dodgy Mo Flirty as they were being led down to the cells after the trial, and was awarded the initial punishment of solitary confinement for 3 months, or until the smell had finally abated, whichever was the sooner. Nathaniel got his farm back, courtesy of the money from the Sun, and then buggered off with a girl on the pastry tractor. Nathaniel's wife Betty kept the farm going after the nice new manager at Credit Agricole had just moved in to help her out a bit. And George has now got a lot more time to think and plot and scheme. 8 years, in fact. But then George is a trier these days. He'll get it right next time.